All right, so we have our final panel today, in which I'll be moderating, but I would like to bring Brandi Shelton, Robbie Parks, and Max Coping up to sit down and let's talk about AI tools for marketing and e-commerce growth. Appreciate you guys hanging in there. We are almost done.
Thank you.
Awesome. Get my questions up here for you guys, but before we do that, I want to start from that end to you and just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and before we jump into the questions in this topic.
Perfect. Thanks, Nakia. Appreciate it, and thank you so much to the SBA team for having us here, Microsoft here with you today, and the Georgia Tech team for hosting an amazing event in this space. So my name is Max Coping. I am S&B segment lead for Microsoft Advertising within the Microsoft AI group. So I spend my day thinking about particularly self-serve customers, small businesses that use our platforms to grow their business through advertising and marketing, and particularly thinking, working with my engineering partners to really make your experiences as small businesses as easy and effective and productive as possible. So that's my work life. I'm based in Seattle, 3 kids. I'm originally from the UK, and so I was really stoked to see one of my other panelists here is in the tea world, because that's one of my passions, obviously being British and Irish, but I just need tips, I think, on how to organize my tea drawer, because it's a complete disaster right now. But yeah, pleasure to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
I thought you were going to say you're from Mobile, Alabama.
You couldn't guess? However, as of February this year, I'm officially a US citizen. So I'm very stoked about that. So I get tea, taxation, and representation now, which is awesome. Putting it together.
Awesome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is
your mic is.
Probably share your mic with Robbie.
Yeah, it should just, yeah.
Let's see. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm a mother of 3 as well, so I can talk really loud if I need to. My name is Brandi Shelton, and I am the founder and co-owner of a wonderful loose leaf tea brand here in Atlanta, Georgia, called Just Add Honey. We have a brick and mortar on the Beltline. Our production facility is there, and we also have an event space. Travel the world for a cup of tea and wanted to bring back flavors and feelings that kind of reminisce home and otherworldly travel to that cup, and then open a brick and mortar so that people of all shapes, walks of life could see a cup of tea in themselves. So happy to be here.
Awesome. And Robbie again.
Long time no see.
I know.
My name is Robbie Parks. I'm a statewide CE trainer and business consultant with the University of Georgia Small Business Development Center. My God, that was long. Lots of words. And so as I've mentioned before, in my role, not only do I train businesses, but I also work one-on-one in business consulting. Primarily for me, it's any type of marketing, artificial intelligence, branding. That's my wheelhouse.
Awesome. And so once again, Nakia Melecio, Senior Research Faculty here at Georgia Tech. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So my first question is for you, Max. Why is AI such a powerful tool in marketing and e-commerce? And can you give some examples in terms of, we heard a few on the last panel and just walked through, Elisa just walked us through a very powerful script on that, but just want to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, sure. And, I think first thing to say, I've worked in the advertising marketing industry for about 18 years. And even being within the industry, it is a head-turning pace that we've seen in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And for me, what it feels like is AI is going from a position where it had potential to where we actually can implement it in practice. So my hope is today that as a panel, we can leave you with practical tips you can take away, maybe even a checklist of things you can think about how you can grow your business using AI. I briefly want to mention that obviously I work for Microsoft, and being an industry partner, I want to present a balanced perspective. I will reference Microsoft solutions and consumer trends we see on our services, but I will also reference solutions and products from major platforms you already potentially use, like Google, Meta, Apple, and others. The list is hugely long, OpenAI, etc. But I want to make sure that what I present is a balanced perspective. So with that said, Microsoft, what you may or may not know about Microsoft, just briefly, is that we have built a global advertising business. We've got about 1 billion consumers that use our services on a monthly basis across Search, Copilot, LinkedIn, Edge, Windows, Xbox. It's a long list, including 1,500 publishers on display and connected TV like Netflix. So we have a long history in advertising, but also as a business, we've been very intentional about investing in AI through strategic partnerships like that with OpenAI. But this wave has really been a long time coming. So as a company, we outlined 6 principles for responsible AI deployment in 2017. And those haven't actually changed significantly in any great sense. So we've seen this wave coming, we've invested behind it, and now hopefully you're going to see that rolled out in products across Windows, Teams, Office 365. Our CEO basically said that we are a Copilot company now. So we take it very seriously. We're extremely invested in AI and believe in fundamentally not only the democratizing capability that the tool, and I think many panelists have mentioned this, but also just as a way to drive societal good. Right. We genuinely believe in the impact they can drive. Now, in terms of marketing specifically, one of the key areas I think we have to reference is search. As consumers, we're seeing a significant change in how consumers are searching. I suspect many of you have used ChatGPT or Google's Gemini or Copilot from Microsoft. Fundamentally, as an input mechanism and as a discovery mechanism, it's changing how we search. So instead of being, keyword driven, which I think that we have been really as consumers for the last 20, 25 years, we've been trained to search on keywords. Fundamentally, AI, generative AI, large language models are enabling us to interact with natural language, with vision, with speech, which is a very, very different way of operating. So what we're seeing internally with our Copilot product and experience is that queries are longer, much more specific, and fundamentally people are getting significant value out of these products due to relevance. In the last year, we've seen 13 billion Copilot queries, 12 billion images created in just the last year alone, and that's doubled year over year. So the pace of change is moving. And I think an interesting stat I also wanted to share, which it could be relevant to you as marketers, is that from a modality perspective, consumers are getting more comfortable searching not only with input text, but with voice. So we've seen a 270% increase in mixed input between both typed queries and voice queries. So you think about your mobile search experience, you may be using typed inputs as well as voice. Very interesting change in consumer behavior. Just briefly, and I know because I've had a long opening monologue, I think an area that is also interesting for us as marketers, running paid campaigns, which many of you may already do. What we're seeing is that consumers are getting much better relevance, much better results in terms of what they're searching for. One indicator of that from an ads perspective is that if you look at the Copilot experience that we have at Microsoft, using Copilot search versus traditional Bing search, we see a decline of what we call the bounce rate. So that's called a quick click back rate of minus 69%. So what does that mean? Basically, it means that consumers are getting the results they expect much, much quicker and are not having to do I'm going to click on this link and go right back to it. So on average of ads, minus 69%. In some ad formats, it's minus 90%. Yeah. So more detailed query from natural language, more specific results leading to better consumer outcomes.
Awesome. Same question, Brandi. I'm interested in your perspective on it.
Well, in our company, we use a lot of the AI tools, such as an OpenAI or Gemini or Chat, any of those tools, as an additional employee. And not necessarily in the traditional sense, but in the, okay, I have one marketing manager now, and she does all of our social, all of our email campaigns, twice a week, our text messaging once a week, our, all of our socials daily. And we start and get it to almost the finish line.
Right.
And so then the AI acts as like we pass the baton. And so then the information that we give them is curated specific to our brand, specific to our business, and it allows it to open doors that we might have missed or things that our limited scope of knowledge doesn't allow us to do. And then from there, we dig deeper and go a little bit further. We take the baton back and then maybe channel it. So like the example that was given previously is exactly how we do things. This is what I have.
Right.
Help me tweak it, help me fix it, help me finalize it. And it works well versus like it being my only source.
Right.
It is an employee that needs direction
Right.
and that needs guidance to help us complete a project.
Right. I think one of the things, and my colleague Renata mentioned it earlier about, it's great to use these tools, but I think sometimes people have a tendency to rely on them without verification, right? And then they try to implement these tools without no strategy or no background to know how to implement these tools. And you see it all the time, right? Like I've seen people send me stuff and I'm like, okay, this is ChatGPT clearly.
Yes.
Like, because clearly you don't talk that way, right? Well, thou cometh from this day. And I'm like, clearly you don't talk that way, right? And then I see something like poor subject verb agreement and misplaced modifiers. And I'm like, what? Like, just like clearly you did not write this, right? And so I think that I think using it responsibly to create marketing campaigns, I still think it's important to not lose the holistic aspect of engaging with your customers and creating the true psychographic profiles of who they are and spending the time engaging them and then using the AI tools to enhance what you already know, right? To help you make better triage decisions in terms of that. So with that, I'm curious, and come to you, Robbie, with a question. What are the challenges of using EI commerce in marketing, and how do you help us address this? Like, do you spend time talking with them on how to use it responsibly, how to address it, how to implement it?
Yeah, when I work with businesses, so the first part of the question, the challenge is, it's just getting started. People are so overwhelmed, and I love the comment from our guest from OpenAI, the first word is yo.
Yeah.
You don't even know, right? And that's what I tell my clients, is to just play around with it, but understand the fundamentals. You mentioned starting with strategy. Ask the question, and I'll probably speak in prompt here, very abbreviated, but when I'm working with clients, I'll say, ask it. This is my type of business. What is an example of a marketing strategy? Can you help me understand my customer? Can you understand the analysis? If you can think it,
Right.
AI can do it.
Right.
Pretty much. But you just have to start playing with it. You just have to get started.
Yeah, one of the things that was mentioned earlier, and I see this with a lot of scientists who are thinking about, using AI to implement their technologies or their solutions in appropriate and inappropriate uses of ChatGPT. I tell them under no circumstance, I know Elisa's here, I don't care what Sam Altman says. When he says they're not training on your data, guess what? They're training on your data, right? And so I see scientists all the time upload their IP, upload their research papers. I'm like, why are you doing that? That is such an irresponsible way to utilize AI. Now, I understand that you're looking for some very specifics. I get why you're specifically doing that, but that's information that you're putting out there, right? And I cannot tell you the cases of misuse of AI, and then when they do invention disclosures and patent searches, and when they start to do their due diligence, and you're like, well, you already disclosed this, and now the clock is already ticking, and then now you've got someone else that's beat you to the IP, right? So there's some things that in terms of how you're using AI, using it responsibly, not using it responsibly, but I do think it's important when you think about the term, what we're talking about here, using AI in marketing, I mean, still don't not hire a communication person and a marketing person and leverage that person's expertise and skills, because I think it's important when you talk about the implementation piece of that. So my question is, I'm going to come back to Brandi here. How can AI help small businesses reach more customers and grow their e-commerce business? Because obviously that's the goal for every small business, right? Which is to gain more customers. But there's a lecture that a good friend of mine, Grant, do. It's called How to Fire Your First Customer. Some people have customers they need to fire because they're just costing them way too much money.
Yeah.
So talk about how to get customers and how to use it responsibly.
Well, I mean, data never lies, and
Right.
so I start with that. So I can use 3 months, 6 months, a year's data to find out where we're doing well and kind of dive deeper into that and find things or opportunities with AI on how the not well sellers or the not so hot products or services that are offered are not being rendered to customers. So you kind of take both ends of the spectrum and find ways to dig a little bit deeper versus going wider. You can find, it's easier to sell to the customer you already have. So finding ways to give alternative uses of a product, especially like our teas or anything like that. We've started going deeper into our recipes and how to make it, how to clean up your drawer, 5 top things, those kind of behaviors that customers already lean into, finding creative ways for items on either end of the spectrum and let
Right.
AI help with finding concepts and marketing ideas to dig deeper to that customer.
Right. So I'm going to ask a pretty loaded question, and this is not on our question base. One of the things that I see in terms of when you ask the question of who is a customer, how do you define a customer? When you talk to most people, like for instance, let's just give you an example. I'll say, well, what is your product? I'm selling a sensor. Who are you selling it to? To Delta. Who uses the sensor? And where does the sensor go? Well, the sensor goes in an engine. Well, who's the customer? The CEO. Why is the CEO your customer? You know what I mean? Who is the person that's using it, right? The engineer that puts it in there. But is that really the customer? And I think small businesses really have a hard time identifying who their customers are, right? They have a perceived value who benefits from the thing that they create, but they don't have an understanding of who the actual customer is. And you see this often in healthcare, right? When you ask, well, who's the customer? Well, it's the patient. No, the patient's the beneficiary. They never pay. And so we see this often when you're trying to create these marketing strategies and campaigns around who are you actually marketing to, there's a value chain, right? And so understanding the complexity of a value chain, and then how can someone use AI in that case? How can they use AI to help them better triage who are the real customers and how strategic and targeting can they be in using these kinds of tools?
It's a really great question. And, I think Nakia's hit the nail on the head. You have to know very clearly what are your marketing objectives? What are you aiming for? Is it conversions? Is it site visits? Is it calls to your business? Who's your likely audience? Doing that background work. Those are fundamental marketing things you are inescapable. And the AI is not necessarily going to do it for you. It can be an assistant in helping you hone that.
Right.
But you really need to understand what are the core value props of your business. And who should you be targeting? Now, in terms of activating, kind of building on the last question as well, how do you maximize that balance between being extremely targeted, but also reached and reaching the maximum number of potential end customers? I think an interesting application that we've seen emerge in the digital ads industry over the last few years, let's say 2-3 years, has been the application of predictive AI. So by predictive AI, what I mean is ostensibly started as machine learning, but now has been augmented by other elements such as generative AI, creative asset generation, and so on. So if you were to visit, let's say you're doing paid marketing campaigns, right, on search or display or other social media properties, there are certain types of campaigns that combine, I think, an ease of use which is accessible to many businesses. You don't have to be a deep practitioner to leverage them, but they also combine some of the strengths of AI and level the playing field in a similar way that we've been talking about. So if you were to go to Meta, they have Advantage Plus campaigns, which display across all Meta properties on their social network. Or if you were to look at Google with Performance Max or Microsoft advertising with Performance Max, what you're doing with those types of campaigns is you fundamentally start with your objective. So what am I looking to do? I'm going to aim to drive conversions or a target return on ad spend, whatever your key objective is. But what you're going to do is enter your URL, so your desired landing page, and this is where the AI kicks in. It's super cool, and if you've not tried it, I'd recommend trying it. It's kind of like a bit of magic. You enter your URL, the AI will essentially take your destination, analyze it, bring back, and start constructing a campaign for you straight away. And what you can do from that point is augment that with images. Maybe there are images you already own, have IP for. Maybe you don't have anything at all. With generative AI as part of that workflow, you can now, on the fly, give it very specific prompts and create creatives that will be part of your ad campaigns. These could be images on certain platforms, video already, which is super cool, very powerful videos from still images, keywords, copy, stuff that is actually very, very difficult to do well. And the AI can get you, 80, 90% of the way there. What you ultimately do is then let the AI launch a campaign, give it a few weeks to train. And I think this is where, there's a misconception that AI is like alchemy. Right. It's not. It's still a machine learned process. But if you can get it right, and you can hone it, and you can shepherd that process, you can actually get some superb results out of it without having to be a deep practitioner in marketing. Right. So I think that's a good example. Like my marketing team were very specific and said, you got to read these stats because they're fresh off the press. Right. But if you look at, let's say, just the Microsoft network as an example, when you're using these kind of predictive campaigns, advertisers are seeing a 32% decline in cost per acquisition by using these AI-enabled campaigns versus traditional manually implemented campaigns. It's a very significant 3 times increase in return on ad spend. Like, these are big numbers. These are numbers that we hadn't seen for a long time in the ads industry. And then if you were to combine that with something like generative AI, let's say a Gemini or a Copilot in our experience in our case, you're seeing 3 to 4 times higher conversion rate. So you're combining AI marketing campaigns with AI consumer experiences, and you're getting almost, you're combining the value across both. So if you're looking at paid marketing, I think it's worth trying. But it does take some getting used to, and you're going to have to get comfortable with giving some level of control over to AI, which can feel uncomfortable at points. Right.
Yeah, so I love the example that Elisa used earlier. So I have this T-shirt. A friend of mine who works at MIT, and it says "Talk nerdy to me," right? And so you can fill in the blank what it really means. So when she shared the example, which I thought was phenomenal, one of the things that was not shared in the example, which I think is critical, which I'm going to come to you, Robbie, on, is when I mentioned the statement of how to fire your first customer. How many of you know what unit economic churn is? Raise your hand. Unit economic churn. Okay, 2 people. All your business owners, right? So when you think of unit economic churn, that's people that you're spending money on. There's 2 things you need to pay attention to: your lifetime value, your customer acquisition cost, and your unit economic churn. If you're not paying to the unit economic churn, when you start to look at the amount of money you're spending to acquire customers versus the amount of customers that you're bleeding every month, and then you're not looking at uniquely in terms of where are we getting these customers, where are we spending the most of our money, where should we stop spending our money, where should we increase our spend, all that ties back into your marketing aspect. And all those things will fluctuate. So if your unit economic churn is above 1.5% monthly, I'm going to tell you this. If you look at the average where it may cost you, I don't know, whatever, take an average business, you take something in high sales, you're probably spending $150,000 to $200,000 for a customer acquisition cost. If you got some like product that you're selling, you're probably spending anywhere from $500 to $1,500 per customer to acquire a customer. Now let's start to do the math. You've got 1 million customers. Now let's just say, okay, you're losing 20% of those customers. Do you even know where you're losing those customers? Do you even know how to get those customers back? Do you even know why they're disloyal to you? Do you even know what's in your marketing and your campaign and your messages in terms of why they're leaving you? This is why this is so important to leverage these tools. And what Elisa shared, how do you leverage and use it properly, right? So everyone should have raised their hand about unit economic churn, because it will kill your business, right? And you can think about it in terms of, I've got 100,000 customers I'm onboarding a month, but I'm losing 30,000 each month. So now think of that 30,000 times $200,000 you spent to acquire them. Right? So this is why it's important to understand how to leverage these tools. And so I want to know from you, Robbie, how do you have this conversation with business owners when they're coming down to sit down and strategically have strategy with you to leverage tools to make sure that they are efficient in their business operation?
Yeah, that's great. And I love the point of not everyone is your customer. And it is okay to fire a customer if you need to. But I think the most important thing that you said was strategy.
Right.
Because so often a business owner will come to me and say, I want to be on Facebook, or I want to start an email campaign or get on TikTok. And I say, why?
Right.
And they don't know, and they blink at me, or
Right.
they'll say, I want to reach a younger audience on Facebook. So that's why it's important to start with strategy, start with that goal. Then you can use the AI tools to say, this is my business, this is my goal, give me some ideas of how to get there, or even to your point of analyzing what you're already doing. It's hard when you're in your business to be objective about your business, right? That's one thing I do is I'll come in and I'll say, what was the goal of this post? I had a client the other day that said, no one engaged with this post. And I looked at it and I said, you didn't ask anything.
Right.
You gave them no reason to.
Right.
AI can look at your messaging. AI can look at what you're already doing. AI can look at customer reviews and analyze the sentiment, analyze the meaning behind it objectively.
Yeah, so I want to come to you, Brandi. So the question is how do you ensure that when using AI, the content that you're generating is correct, holistic, and serves the purpose of your small business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, luckily, I've been doing tea for 18 years, so I know most of the answers, so it can't just feed smoke to me.
Right.
But to back to the marketing piece, or trying to find my customers or figure out where they are, I do use my data. So I go back to my website and see, where are they coming from? Are they a direct source? Are they coming from a social? Are they coming from someone else's post or an article written about us? And so leveraging that data, that I can then feed to AI, hey, this is where we're seeing our most traffic. How do we double down on that? How do we re-engage an abandoning cart customer? Or all of my social is leveraged to a younger audience, but they don't spend. So how do I engage? Well, how do I engage them? Maybe I create a unique experience specifically for them. So creating a strategy around the data that is received to me, I then am able to use time and my level of expertise to make an educated decision. And we don't always get it right. But we don't just fire off really fast. We give it a second and do a little bit more homework so that we are more right than wrong.
Right. I'm going to make this comment, then I'm going to go to Max. One of the things, you remember that show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? So I think we need to make this, though, another AI bot, Are You Smarter Than ChatGPT? Because I'm going to tell you, is I've used ChatGPT in some ways. I'm like, that makes no sense at all what it just gave me, right? But again, to Renata's point, if you don't know what you're doing, you will assume that it's correct, right? And you will start enacting that information. One of the things that I will also say around that is I've seen scenarios where people have used content from ChatGPT and have found themselves in IP issues by leveraging other content. And that could be significant because you start deploying this stuff without verification, it can become an issue. So make your comment, but also want to know, what are your organizations doing internally to ensure that the consumer is using your solutions in a way that doesn't put them in an infringement situation?
Yeah, no, I think that Brandi's point about being a domain expert in the product that you're selling is very important. You need to know your industry well, you need to know your competitors well, because you know, ultimately, as we discussed, these AI assistants, they are assistants. You are the editor, you are the owner of the copy that goes out to the industry, that goes out in your marketing campaigns. So I think there's maybe a couple of comments I'd say around the creative process. One is using tools that from providers that are ethical. I think is an important component that these companies that are creating tools stick to certain ethical standards and guidelines and use of data and IP and so on. Important subnote. But when it comes to creation of campaigns and creative assets, let's say images, videos, copy, keywords, you own the creative process ultimately. The tool can help you, and it can make it really easy, but you should consider yourself as the marketing director, marketing leader that signs this creative off. So if you know your industry and you know certain IP exists, you're going to want to be pretty, I'd say, thorough in scanning what images, video, copy is going out on your marketing campaigns, on your website, because there is room for error, and we definitely encourage you as part of that process to do that. But more broadly, just on Nakia, your question around ethics, as a company, Microsoft, we've had the same set of ethics since 2017 that we outlined. There's no piece of AI code or technology that goes out to the industry from Microsoft that has not gone through a rigorous ethics review as part of the process. So I would encourage you to work with providers and tool creators that can commit to a certain level of ethics and standards.
Right.
To protect yourself fundamentally as well.
Right. No, absolutely. I'm going to say this, then I'm going to go to Robbie really quick. One of the issues that I've seen and other experts have seen and the industry have seen is when you ask these tools very complex questions and very large language models, there's a tendency to hallucinate, right? And if it doesn't know, it fills in the blank, right? And it makes assumptions around what it may think you want, right? And what you're saying. And again, I'm not discouraging from using these tools, because I'm saying there's a great way to use them, and it's important for the development of AI. I know policy is still lagging behind very, very grossly around that. And I know that healthcare around clinical decision support tools is very concerned. The FDA is like, well, who's making the decision? Is it the doctor or is it the tool, right? You know what I mean? In terms of that. But I do think it's important to, as you all as small business owners, still build in what are the ethical things for you, right? How are you going to use these tools? And building your own internal policies and your own internal verification check systems before you deploy any type of marketing tool in that regard, and have someone go back and verify that, because it can be very costly if you don't do that.
Yeah, and to that point, ask it to cite its sources. If you're asking it for information, say, tell me where you got this. Tell me why you feel this way. And to the point of hallucinations, now, is anybody from Google here? So Gemini has fixed itself since then, but I have an example in one of my classes. When Gemini first rolled out, it might have even been Bard then, I asked it to help me identify some micro-influencers in Atlanta for this type of purpose, blah, blah. It returned 3 people with confidence. The handles, the number of followers, everything about their brand, and it was a complete hallucination. They did not exist. So they've since done better, but I use that. Don't just say, oh, they did this with confidence. You have to check. You have to check behind it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to mention the name. You can Google it yourself. There was an attorney who cited court cases that did not exist. And when the judge clerk court went to look up those cases, it was disastrous for him in his career. And so again, it's important to use these tools and use them in the right way. But as we come to a close here, just because I want to leave a little bit of room for them to ask you all, the experts, some questions. Some of the things that I see from the research side that are very promising around AI is just in terms of decision making, is quantum. And I am very excited to see kind of where the intersection, I don't know if any of you all are intersecting with that, but in terms of the tools and the decision-making processes around, are we just going to, I know AI is hot, but also there is a lot of things that around like spatial AI with Dr. Fei-Fei Li out of Stanford, things that she's doing with human sensing, people and machines. And when you think about AI, we're still working and integrating with machines in that regard. And so I'm just curious, and just in terms of how do you all work with these new creative products and these creative brands that are building the next generation of innovation, and the complexity. I know I'm a researcher, so he's like, why is he asking me this question? Like, bring Pascal back, the next T, right? So I'm just curious, I'm sure you guys hear things, right? It's no secret that quantum is coming. It's no secret that we don't have the compute data centers to manage the power and all of that, but it is something that where you take something that would solve a 100-year problem in less than 30 seconds, it's worth giving attention to. So Max, any thoughts? He's like, no.
Yeah, I think in terms of, there are, like, I can speak that Microsoft is making investments in the space and has done for a few years.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything I can add to the story that hasn't already been published by Microsoft publicly.
Right.
But fundamentally, I think, like, going back to the theme of the day, like, where we're, this phenomenal amount of compute and capability ultimately has to be useful. It has to be useful and practical to you as business owners, as consumers. And, I think that where I would focus more is, I think there's a temptation to look at, the different model capabilities and benchmarks that they exceed. But fundamentally for us as marketers and for you as business owners, what can it actually do for you? Take the jargon away from it. What can this tool actually do for you? And, I think as we wrap up, there's probably a little checklist of things I'd encourage you to consider, and maybe Brandi, you can add as well around what would you leave the audience with in terms of practical tips to go do today.
Right.
I hope you don't mind me straying off the question, but I think one of the areas I would encourage you as business owners is to look at your digital bedrock. So your digital bedrock, what I call digital bedrock, as not industry term, is my term. Look, your website is critical. Continue to invest in your website, the usability of it, how easy is it to interface on mobile. Think about SEO, search engine optimization. Ultimately, you need your site to be found, your content to be included if you're producing content. Continue to invest there, either with SEO practitioners that can help you do it, or use Microsoft, Google tools to do it yourself. SEO is a big field in and of itself, so definitely consider that. I would say claiming your digital presence seems like a basic thing, but use Bing Places or Google My Business or Apple's Business Connect to claim your business and physical presence, because all that information is being crawled, is being searched, is being accessed by all these extremely powerful tools. I would say tagging. So if you aren't familiar with tagging, website tagging, it's extremely important to the efficacy and attribution of your marketing campaigns. So think carefully about your tagging strategy and how you want to tag your site. And then content. This is my perspective. I'm a big believer in content. If you're in the right industry, if content is compelling, because I think it's a great opportunity for you to stake a claim and share your voice and your perspectives on your specific industry and claim domain with your potential consumers. Maybe just a couple last points. I consider paid marketing, if that's something that you're interested in. There's a lot of tools, as I mentioned, in terms of generative AI and predictive AI that can be used to your advantage, that ultimately are very sophisticated. Go try them on various provider sites such as Google or Microsoft, Meta, and so on. They've got creative tools within them that help you with the creative generation process and kind of help you unlock some creativity there with your campaigns if you need help. And then lastly, I would say use these platforms as ways to increase your productivity. So not only in terms of, let's say, campaign management, but also in terms of a lot of these tools have built-in diagnostic or performance management capabilities that are very, very strong, that are accessible, that you can query in natural language. So, for example, in the Mike's Ads platform, you can ask it natural language questions about how my campaign's going, where am I having issues with my campaign, how could I optimize it to make it better? And also, you can ask these agents very specific questions about marketing. Our entire knowledge base within Mike's Ads business has been indexed, has been used as grounding for the co-pilot within the Mike's Ads platform. You can ask it pretty much anything about our platform, and it'll be able to tell you, teach you, find the right links for you to learn. So these tools are awesome. They really give you easy access, and what I like about them is they can take kind of complex things and distill it down to something that's very accessible.
All right, we're getting the Sandman sign over
Sorry.
here.
I missed it.
To pull us off. So I'm gonna wrap us up really quick, but I will do a cheap plug on one tool that I've been wearing out. Stanford created. It's called Storm, and this tool is absolutely phenomenal. So it will literally write you an entire research paper. You just give it a topic, and like it will cite it, everything. My colleague back there, Peralt, did it. He asked it to do a biography on him, and he was just like, okay, is this like thing stalking me?
And yes, it is.
It was like freaky and saying, yeah, it's called Storm by Stanford. Great tool if you want to like create white papers, content, those kinds of things in that regard. Hey, let's give our panel a round of applause in that regard. All right, so with that, as we continue to close here, and feel free to ask them any questions, I just want to thank you all for coming out to this AI Summit here hosted by the SBA and us here at Georgia Tech. It's been a pleasure seeing all of you, and thank you so much for hanging in here with us this morning. And any of our contact information, I'm easy to find. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. If I can ever do anything to support you or help you in that regard, please reach out to our panelists, our experts that we've had throughout the course of the day. They've got wealth of knowledge, and there's just absolutely no way we can capture in 30, 40 minutes the experience that they all have. And thank you so much to the SBA team. I don't know where you got to go, but you got to get up out of the Candida building. All right? Thank you, guys.